This week in the business of tech, we have to talk about tech layoffs. Cyber insurance rates continue to rise and policies are harder to get. HR and retention top the list as the Great Resignation isn't over. Cloud prices are looking to increase, and could breaches impact a credit score? All these stories and more. Hit those like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. I was gone last week covering 2 conferences, and while catching up to find the items we care about, 2 stories emerged that I wanted to address first. So first, let's talk about tech layoffs. Meta announced 11,000 job cuts, which is 13% of its workforce. Lyft cut 700 jobs, Stripe cut 14% of its staff, and Twitter cut half its workforce. Salesforce is cutting 1,000 people. Within the MSP space, Gradient MSP laid off 20 people, and the MSP SATA cut 11% of jobs. Amazon is expected to lay off 10,000 employees, although it currently employs 1 million people, so it's a small percentage. All told, 120,000 tech workers will be laid off in 2022. Why do we care? I want to dive into the how of layoffs. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg leaned into taking responsibility for the layoffs, and severance packages start with 16 weeks and include extra time for service. More importantly, he took responsibility for misjudging the market conditions, anticipating that the pandemic change in customer behavior was permanent when it wasn't. Contrast that with Musk's brutal layoffs at Twitter, done in emails, with such aggressive cuts that some employees were then asked to come back. If you dig into this process, most of it was cruel. In the middle would be Gradient, where CEO Colin Knox explained that the layoffs as a change in strategy, and then indicated that the company was, quote, stronger than we could have hoped. Here, the wording was polished, yet there was little ownership of the choices, which resulted in overstaffing for the current and upcoming climate. There was no, "I'm sorry." 2 lessons. In every case, these changes are necessary to shore up the companies for uncertain economic times, and that's reasonable. But this is personal for those who lose their jobs, and ex-employees take that hurt with them. How that transition is done is a judgment on the leadership, which future employees may weigh. Second, most of these layoffs are not actual technology companies. Lyft is a transportation company. Stripe is a payments company. Twitter and Meta are social media companies. Don't misread the disruption in so-called tech as impacting technology workers. They happen to be technology people in other industries. The data shows that the job market is tight overall, with the jobless rate at 3.7%. So customers won't feel this, and in my mind, neither will technology services companies. That market is still tight. Second, there was the third conference last week, the one I didn't attend, which was Zoomtopia. Among several announcements, I want to highlight one. The company is rolling out Mail and Calendar, as was previously expected. Now out as a beta, this product is end-to-end encrypted with other Zoom mail service users. Zoom One Business Plan customers can create their own custom domains. CRN spoke with their new channel chief, and in that interview, Todd Surdy noted that the company was looking for its channel contribution to grow to 50% from its current level of 30%. Why do we care? I've been highlighting the importance of the productivity layer for a while now, and while this announcement was expected, a mail and calendar offering from Zoom could be significant. 2 major players, Google and Microsoft, might see some competition. And with Zoom investing in a via partners go-to-market strategy, it's easy to see some possibilities. Some agile partners might take advantage of this new play. Yesterday's news of layoffs among some large organizations was a downer, so how about some better news? Per SMB Group research in a survey done in July, about 2/3 of SMBs believe revenues will increase in the next fiscal year. Just 6% are expecting a decrease. Let's also consider a potpourri of interesting market data points. Conversions of office buildings into apartments is increasing. Overall, apartment conversions, including those of warehouses, hotels, and healthcare buildings, jumped 25% during 2020 to 2021 to about 28,000 units, compared to the prior 2-year period before the pandemic, according to Rent Cafe. Conversion of office buildings jumped the most, by 43% to 11,090 units. They make up the largest share of conversions. I mentioned yesterday that the tech job market is good, particularly in tech services. CompTIA's latest data continues to back that up. The latest jobs report marked the 23rd consecutive month of jobs growth, a healthy 28% higher than last year. Amidst all this, per workplace technology specialist Robin's Q3 2022 hybrid workplace report, office attendance is up. But it's not why you think. It's seasonal. Employees travel to the office less in the summer, when only 24% of office space is in use. They visit the office a little more in October, 27%, then travel frequently to the office in early November, 32%, before office use dips close to zero ahead of Thanksgiving and the winter holidays. Robin's data indicated that office attendance was 10% in Q3 compared to Q2. New data from Castle Systems tells us what days too. Mondays and Fridays are the lowest occupancy dates, with Tuesdays and Wednesdays being the busy days. And speaking of seasonal, more than 100,000 Americans missed work last month because of childcare problems, an all-time high that's even greater than during the height of the pandemic, according to new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What happened? Sickness, be it flu, RSV, or COVID, collided with staffing shortages at schools and daycares. Now, why do we care? Slowly, ever so slowly, bosses are losing the battle to bring people back into the office. Landlords are repurposing properties as they can, and people are in demand generally, meaning employees still have that much power, and those people control when and where they work. Don't forget they're people too. They get sick and have issues with childcare that overrides other concerns. So why do we care? This is all the justification for why the productivity layer will remain a pretty hot space for a while. A new Delinea survey looks at cyber insurance. Conditions are not improving as insurers continue to reduce the scope of their coverage. The survey shows that 80% of companies have had to use cyber insurance, and insurers are reducing coverage, resulting in only about 30% of companies saying their policy covers critical risks. Let's quote Channel Futures. The survey shows that nearly 70% of organizations have applied for cyber insurance. Of those, 93% were approved when they applied, and 65% claimed the process took less than 3 months. Risk reduction is the main reason for applying. However, 1/3 of respondents said it was also due to requirements from executive management and boards of directors. Furthermore, 25% cited recent ransomware incidents as a primary decision driver. Given the pressure coming from the top, it's no surprise that 93% received the budget required to purchase their cyber insurance. That's even as 75% of respondents said premiums increased in their last renewal. Why do we care? 80% of companies using insurance with claims isn't a viable model for insurance agencies. Customers will want the product, but prices will continue to rise. Expect the qualifications for getting coverage to continue to increase too. This is good news for competent providers, and we must acknowledge that that isn't the whole market. Last summer, the Great Resignation was all the talk, and it paid off, with job hoppers finding themselves a median annual raise of 8.5%. If you stayed put, that raise was just 5.9%. That window may be closing. Wage growth ticked from 8.5% this summer to 7.6% in October. That's still more than the overall wage growth, which is 6.4%. Unsurprisingly, retention is a top issue for HR. It's now the biggest one. In 2021, about 40% of HR professionals surveyed by Lattice said talent acquisition was a priority over the next 12 months. Only 17% of Lattice respondents said as much in 2022. And this issue overall is a thing. Nash Squared, who provide talent, noted that 70% of digital leaders globally felt they can't keep up with tech trends because of a lack of skilled workers. And on average, digital leaders are losing about 11% of their team every year. Many because the staff is looking for higher salaries. Finally, while talking about workers, I want to highlight an opinion piece in the Washington Post. Quoting the piece, "To understand what happened, it's helpful to divide the millions of Americans who were in the labor force in February 2020 into three rough categories. There were the millions who thought they possessed a secure job, only to be laid off or furloughed as the pandemic lockdowns set in. There were white-collar office workers who continued to work 40 or more hours a week, but now from home. And then there were the workers, grocery store employees, food service workers, and utility workers, as well as police officers, postal workers, teachers, and healthcare providers, whose work was suddenly dubbed essential, without whose efforts society as we know it would cease to function." The piece breaks down what happens to each of these groups. Why do we care? The window may be closing, but it hasn't closed. I'll start with the opinion piece, which is a great read to dive into. It's easy to lump workers into one large group, but the division of three matters. Most technology services companies will employ those white-collar workers, but customers may employ any of the three categories. Knowing your customer well will make a difference. Also of note, retention. This week's stories continue to reinforce how hard it is to find employees, despite the distraction of big tech layoff noise. Ignore the noise and focus on your people. In the fight against today's cybercriminals, we are much stronger as a community. That's why Huntress is proud to launch the Huntress Neighborhood Watch Program, a collection of resources designed to help elevate the broader security community. To kick off the Neighborhood Watch program, Huntress is offering internal use licenses. These licenses will be available to the entire MSP community, regardless of if you are a Huntress partner or not, and will give you unrestricted access to the Huntress Managed Security Platform and their team of 24/7 threat hunters. Harden your defenses, protect your own backyard, and better serve your customers by joining the Neighborhood Watch program. Join the neighborhood or learn more at huntress.com/neighborhood. Cloud services may get more expensive. Inflation fueled by rising energy prices will drive AWS, Microsoft, and Google to raise cloud prices in Europe by 30%, according to a Canalys report released on Tuesday. Increases of that magnitude are not expected in the US, where oil and natural gas prices are lower, according to Alex Smith, VP and Channels Research Department lead at the technology research firm. Why do we care? This is a bit of a heads up. European listeners, beware. And US ones, note that the statement said, of that magnitude, not that they weren't coming. Anticipate costs to increase. I couldn't pass on this creative idea. AMC Theaters has announced a partnership with Zoom to turn movie theaters into video conference spaces, turning the facility into a Zoom room. From the release, AMC and Zoom currently anticipate launching Zoom rooms at AMC in up to 17 major US markets sometime in 2023. Upon launch, Zoom rooms at AMC users will be able to book easily online and, in so doing, can select their preferred theaters and meeting time. They will receive a 3-hour block of time to virtually host their event across multiple markets at the selected theaters. AMC and Zoom will provide the necessary equipment for a fully functional Zoom Rooms experience in the comfort of multiple movie theaters in multiple cities simultaneously. Typical auditorium sizes are expected to range between 75 and 150 seats, depending on the theater. Why do we care? This may end up being for fun events, conventions and meetups or special events, but there's something here. It's a tool in the productivity quiver, and coupled with Zoom's announcements earlier this week, gives some space for original thinking. There's something here, for sure. Some updates from the midterm elections. Alabama and New Mexico voters signed off on amendments to their state constitutions, removing barriers to funding to boost internet access. Both states had restrictions on local governments providing aid or grants to private entities, which created a major hurdle for officials to disperse the broadband funding it received through the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Package signed into law last March. The approved amendments will create exceptions allowing officials at the state or local level to dole out broadband funds more efficiently. In Montana, by more than 4 in 5 vote count, voters backed an amendment to their state constitution explicitly banning law enforcement from seizing customers' personal data without a warrant. Also of note, Axios covering how, despite the elections, many of the key players in Congress remain the same, mainly as most cyber legislation is bipartisan. Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, who has long been considered the go-to lawmaker on cybersecurity, will still lead the Senate Homeland Security Committee. The Biden administration wrapped a 120-day cybersecurity sprint this week, seeing more than 7,000 apprentices get hired and added 200 more new registered apprenticeship programs. Guess who is joining these programs? McDonald's, launching its own registered cybersecurity apprenticeship program. With 2023 looming, I want to link to a piece on Eye on Privacy that outlines the current state of play for data privacy laws in California, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, and Virginia. January 1st will be an important date for many of those laws. Also on the radar, Bloomberg is reporting that there may be a push on antitrust by the White House during the remaining portion of the congressional session. Why do we care? 2 areas to care about. There continues to be motion in cyber and data-related laws, and as I keep observing, this is becoming a top role for a provider to monitor. Second are those cybersecurity apprenticeships. If I were a provider, I'd be considering gearing up my participation in those programs. Talent acquisition and retention remain top priorities, and here's part of the solution. Hornet Security, in a new survey, revealed that 40.5% of work emails are unwanted. The Cybersecurity Report 2023, which analyzed over 25 billion work emails, also reveals significant changes to the nature of cyber attacks in 2022, indicating the constant growing threats to email security and the need for caution in digital workplace communications. Phishing remains the most common style of email attack, representing 39.6% of detected threats. In the potential positive incentive category, Axios and the Wall Street Journal are reporting how credit raters and analysts have started factoring histories of cyber attacks into decisions about whether a company will be able to repay its debts. U.S. efforts to crack down on ransomware and mandate companies report cyber insurance and cyber incidents could end up being a credit positive next year, according to Moody's 2023 Cyber Outlook shared first with Axios. The landscape continues to be rife with nation-states. Microsoft issued a report last week focused on those attacks, noting cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure jumped from comprising 20% of all nation-state attacks Microsoft detected to 40%. This spike was due, in large part, to Russia's goal of damaging Ukrainian infrastructure and aggressive espionage targeting of Ukraine's allies, including the United States. Russia also accelerated its attempts to compromise IT firms as a way to disrupt or gain intelligence from those firms' government agency customers in NATO member countries. 90% of Russian attacks they detected over the past year targeted NATO member states, and 48% of these attacks targeted IT firms based in NATO countries. Why do we care? Let's focus on the incentives. If a business's credit score becomes linked to its cyber acumen, and a breach lowers the score, well, this is a set of financial incentives to be concerned about. One can see how the opportunity would be there for the credit bureaus, and how insurers and banks would be interested in this set of knowledge. I can easily see how this could become part of how business is done.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.